are going to do today is just to focus on certain aspects of it, which the four-year curriculum has given us a very, very good opportunity for us to ask some very, very fundamental questions about what we're doing for our undergraduate education. And because the theme of this conference is on transformative student learning, I thought I would want to, we were given a list of themes to pick on, and I decided to pick on nurturing global citizens and how we approach that. I'd like to start off by looking at contextualizing it in the response to globalization that universities all over the world have been doing, and that is internationalization. And when I Googled internationalization in university mission, 3 million entries popped up. And which means if you look at, and I clicked on quite a number of those, and internationalization is the first word that comes up in terms of the university's mission. And in fact, if you look at the survey, which I'm sure you're aware of, this is the third global survey conducted by the International Association of Universities on how internationalization is being implemented in universities. You will find a very interesting comparison here between the study that was done in 2005 and 2009. The next one is coming up, the fourth one. It's going to come up very soon. And you see the change there. Sorry, I was trying to point, but I don't know how to point. Is there a pointer there? Oh, well done, well done, well done. Okay, if you compare this, these are percentage of items ranked highest. You look at 2005, it's the international orientation of staff and students that's ranked highest, okay? Meaning, in other words, it's really looking at the international mix of staff and students. So X percentage coming from, you know, X number of countries. But when it gets to 2009, the highest item is the international awareness of students. So the report concluded that there is a shift away from just the international mix to become more student-centered. Then if you look at improved academic quality in 2005, you will see that it's no longer the major concern, but rather it's the research and knowledge production there, which is 16%. Okay. What is very interesting, though, is that if you look at foster national and international citizenship, where there was 4%, but at least it's there, in 2009 it's disappeared. The item was just not there. So this raises some very interesting questions about what is happening here. So if you look at the internationalization strategies that universities have adopted, you will see a list of all the common strategies, and perhaps we can each ask ourselves, do we have those in place? And I think the answer is yes. We all have those in place. And this is motivated by institutional prestige profile and in some cases revenue, okay? It's quantifiable, that's the important thing, and can be subjected to institutional comparison and benchmarking. There are also, however, those which are motivated by student learning, which is immersion in diverse cultural environments, learning a foreign language, encouraging students to investigate issues concerning global issues. There are quite a number of that, asking students to take courses or or seminars on global issues. However, they're not quantifiable, unfortunately. And this is why, as I was going through the university web pages, those which were listed on the previous slide figure much more prominently than this. And of course, if you look at the ranking system, we all know what the answer to this. I mean, why that is the case. Because internationalization, it's about ratio of international staff to domestic staff, ratio of international students to domestic students, for both the Times Higher ranking as well as the QS ranking. The rationale that was given by both ranking systems was that these are indicators of how global an institution is in its outlook. And QS says that these strategies, of course, are much more than simply the number of international faculty and students, but they serve as strong measures of institutions with advanced strategies in this area. So my question then is, does it necessarily enhance international awareness of our students and international cooperation and solidarity? And does it necessarily enhance intercultural understanding, harmony, integration, or will it lead to intercultural conflict, segregation, and alienation? And in fact, our own experience, and I know that this is a phenomenon which a lot of universities are grappling with, and that is the students, you put the students together, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will work together. In fact, students from one region or one country, they cluster together, and there could be a lot of conflicts or lack of understanding. And in fact, in my own research on the university's language policy, it actually shows up quite clearly that there is a group of local students, and then students from mainland China and international students. And there's a lot of cultural stereotyping going on, a lot of lack of communication going on. So in that context, I think it is very, very important that we ask the question of why do we have internationalization in the university? And the answer's got to be because it's a promotion of global citizenship. That if we take that out, then the whole exercise becomes completely meaningless. And this is where global citizenship then comes in. I also tried to take a look at the characterization of global citizenship in university mission statements. And the coverage is very, very broad. And of course, it's a concept which has been taken for granted. But if you look at the way it's characterized in these statements, you will see that there is a very different understanding of what global citizenship is, and corresponding to that, the strategies that the universities use are different. So we have international perspectives. Now, these in quotes are directly taken from mission statement. You might recognize some of them. Okay. Being a global citizen is having confidence and interest to step into another culture and be willing to recognize other perspectives. It's awareness of the value of cultural difference. We also have a statement which says a global citizen has to be globally competitive. Now that is a very different concept or conception of what a global citizen is. Having global competence, for example, what does that mean? Does that mean that if you speak more than one language, you have global competence? You're able to talk to people, being able to communicate, is that global competence? And so forth. But then you also have a mission statement which says that it's much more than that. You have to aspire to contribute to society in a full and meaningful way through your role as a member of the local, national, and global communities. You have to assume leadership role in the family, the community, and the workplace. And we have this one, which says that global citizenship entails much more than an awareness of cultural sensitivities or an ability to speak more than one language. It is about rich and meaningful connections with communities the world over. It is about securing a sustainable and equitable future for all. So we see the whole broad range there. And I'd like to share with you a quotation from a Japanese intellectual who's also a Buddhism scholar. He was giving a speech at Teachers College, Columbia University in 1996, where he was asked to talk about education of global citizens. And I thought it captured beautifully the spirit of global citizenship. It's the wisdom to perceive the interconnectedness of all life and living, the courage not to fear or deny difference, but to respect and strive to understand people of different cultures and to grow from encounters with them. It's the compassion to maintain an imaginative empathy that reaches beyond one's immediate surroundings and extends to those suffering in distant places. And he said that he could capture it as the qualities of wisdom, courage, and compassion. And I thought that was a very, very good guiding light for the way we think about global citizenship. So in the curriculum reform, the first thing that we engaged in a debate and a discussion across the university is, what are we doing here? What do we hope to achieve in undergraduate education? And these 6 educational aims took us 2 years to formulate, with a lot of refinement of wording, whatever. You get the literary people and the linguists and the philosophers, all sort of commenting on it. But this is finally the version that got adopted by Senate. And I've highlighted those in red, the parts which I feel, the aims which I feel were crucial to global citizenship. Is tackling novel situations and ill-defined problem. Meaning, in other words, because the world is changing so fast that we are constantly confronted by situations where it's not just unfamiliar, it's situations that you've never even dreamt of. And also problems which are not even defined. When this came up, it was very interesting that colleagues were saying, what do you mean ill-defined problems? You just solve problems. This is our job, is to get students to solve problems. What do you mean ill-defined? So we had a very lengthy discussion of what do we mean by that. The problems are not always well-defined. When we give problems to students, we always give them a well-defined problem and say, give us the solution. Well, how about giving them something which you don't even know what the problem is and say, let's explore it, let's define it together. Because if you define the problem wrongly, your answer is wrong, okay? Then it's the personal and ethics that needs to be enacted, self-reflection, greater understanding of others, intercultural understanding and global citizenship, and also lastly, the last point, leadership and advocacy for the improvement of the human condition. So I've highlighted those in this presentation to say, well, how do you then achieve this? This is motherhood and apple pie. So what do you do to achieve that? I think there were 2 areas of discussion which I thought was very useful. In that, first of all, is about the way we define the curriculum. The common conception of the curriculum is that this is what is called the formal curriculum. It's systematic, organized, explicit, it's decontextualized, it is assessed, and it's teacher-driven. The rest of it is co-curricular, and it's also very optional. It's something that students don't have to do if they don't have the time. They only do it if they're interested. It's non-systematic, incidental, tacit, contextualized, not assessed and student-driven. What I'm saying there is that let us reconceptualize it, and let us say that these two should come together as a curriculum. So we redefine it as the totality of student learning experience. And once that was redefined, it's quite fantastic to see how it actually opened up a very different learning space for staff to think about what they can do and what they can achieve and what they can ask the students to do. It also reconceptualized the roles of, for example, the Dean of Student Affairs used to be sort of working in the periphery and not as part of the Teaching Learning Quality Committee, and also in the periphery of the Curriculum Development Committee. Now he plays a very central role, because that is where so much can be done with our students. That's the first discussion. The second discussion that was generated was a different way of understanding learning, which now it's become used quite a lot, experiential learning, but 5 years ago it was not as commonly used, and people ask me, what do you mean experiential learning? All learning is experiential. Sitting in a classroom is experiential. So we had a discussion of that, and it's really underpinned by an understanding of learning as not just cognitive. I'm very much aware of the fact that we have cognitive psychologists in this room. It's not just cognitive, but it's fundamentally social and experiential. So drawing on the work of the philosophers way back in the Song Dynasty and in the Ming Dynasty, it has been pointed out that learning and doing are dialectically related. So after you have experienced it, your knowledge of it will be much clearer, and its significance will be different from what it used to be. Going back to what our first, Gary's plenary speech about what does transformation mean. Transformation is after experiencing it, to me, you see things in a different light. So knowing implies doing, and there can be no knowing without doing. Okay. And in fact, this perspective on learning is very central to Dewey's work, where I've got a quotation up there from Dewey. And of course, it's also picked up by people like the social anthropologists like Jean Lave and Etienne Wenger, which looks at learning as social participation. It's not, it's constructed in authentic social context through social interaction and collaboration. So it's not something that colleagues embrace immediately. It's something that we spend a lot of time discussing, and the examples of the kind of work that they've been doing, it came to light when we tried to theorize what they've been doing and all the wonderful things that I've discovered going around to faculties looking at their work. So I'm going to then show you some examples from three faculties. The first one is from the Faculty of Architecture, where they engage students in thinking about architectural design in a very different way. And I'll let them speak for themselves. Now, how do I do this? Is it loud?
You need to make it full screen?
Because of how, in the classroom it's very, very one-on-one. So the teacher stands and somehow has something to sort of offer the students. In experiential learning, the teachers and students, they go and they encounter a problem together. And maybe the teacher hasn't also encountered this problem. It's new, it's authentic. And so they have to discover the solution together. I think that's very, very important. It creates a different kind of dynamic between teachers and students.
To be able to develop an awareness, not just how to do things academically, but then also to develop a social awareness and environmental awareness, which comes through interacting with real people in real situations. So you can watch news stories, you can read newspapers, you can read books, but it's not the same as having a one-on-one, face-to-face interview.
The project is to construct a community center in the rural village, the Luxor village.
Students in our group have to come up idea of building, and this building must contribute to improve the village's life standards there.
This provides students to take in charge of the whole project.
What I expect is during the project, that village asks us to do something and then we do it, but it's not that bad. It's actually I and my teammate have to find where is the problem and then we solve it.
The classroom is a very controlled environment, and we present problems, but they have somehow pre-existing solutions to those problems. Here, the problems don't have such clear solutions, but beyond that, it's also not very clear what the problems are. So we spend a lot more effort, I could say, and energy trying to define the kind of problems, before we even start to seek solutions.
We have to present our projects to the villagers, and that's the first time we actually present to, instead of our professors or our fellow classmates.
This experience gave me a lot of insight into understanding how society works. I feel like those people were actually quite happy, and I felt good about it, because you can see that you don't have to have so much to be satisfied.
Actually, after we did this project in the village, I'm kind of rethinking about my role. There is always a struggle between an artist and engineering as an architect. You want to present your own idea, and you also want to make your building to serve the people who are going to use them. So how to balance between these two?
I think the social contract is something that is inherent in every architectural project. What I would define as a good architect as a profession is somebody who can take those kinds of values which come from the discipline, that social consciousness or a certain responsibility or certain idealism. The architect also has an idea about how space can enrich youth, communities, people. That might not necessarily be a sort of request from the client. But the architect, I think, any profession has a responsibility to give something, in addition to just solving the problems of the client.
Architecture students always tend to have our own system of language to communicate, but when we are talking to others, we have to figure out a new, plainer language to communicate our ideas.
This project provided me a chance to learn how to work with architects or other disciplines. During the whole workshop, we learned how to understand each other.
Collaboration is a principle. It's a reality of the world that we live in. Collaboration across disciplines allows students to understand that not only is their discipline very specific, but very limited as well. So it allows students to also understand the relationship between their discipline and other disciplines. That for me is very important in experiential learning.
So in doing this, actually, it's not just the architecture students. They've got engineering students and also social science students. And the social science students actually help to do a survey of the villagers to look at what their needs are. So they bring in their social science interview skills and the data analysis skills. I'd just like to, okay. Now what do I do with this? Okay. So after this, apart from the video, the students were also interviewed by the teachers and say, well, what were the challenges?
Chinese countryside is quite different from European one. The development is very quick. Still, there are some similarities. You see the calm way of life and so on, but then at the same time, the scope is different.
I don't think they have visitors to the villages before. So I guess it's like a kind of cultural exchange between us and the villagers.
Asia is a different place, and I mean, it seems that everything is totally different. Built environment, same time landscape, obviously language. So I think the biggest challenge is to kind of digest all this variety.
We had many different themes. Some people were focusing on the social aspect of living in a village, construction,